Well, excellent. Well, I expect a couple people to join maybe throughout the call here, but are we a good point to start it off here?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay. Yeah, I guess for everybody joining us here, we're going to have Langers today, and we really wanted to focus a little bit about maybe the post Fusaka and a little bit about the pre Saturn one time period, kind of get the latest. I think we'll start with that. If there's a little bit of time, I understand Langers, you won't be around next week, and so maybe we'll catch a little bit of your post Dev Connect thoughts on that. But also next week, we want to spend a little bit more time talking about Dev Connect. There's lots to unpack in there with Mav, as well as some marketing updates and for it. But maybe let's just start off with some more of the technical things first, and just talk about Fusaka. Did you guys get up? I didn't do the math conversion, but was it early morning for you guys there in Australia?
I think it was perfect for us. It was like 10 to 8 in the morning. So it was beautiful. How about you
Oh,
guys?
good. Yeah, I'm back. I'm back here in California, and it was pretty good. It was maybe I think at 2 o'clock, roughly around two p.m. The only only problem is I got a last minute work call that was in there, so I missed the preamble of the East Staker call, and I saw they had a couple of the core devs on there, Marius, and a couple of the other ones, and even Vitalik was on there. So I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch that. But was able to watch my node, and I was on I think it's Nimbus, and it was a tiger, not a zebra, and that confused me for a little bit, thinking, "Oh no, what did I do?" And then was able to enjoy a little bit of trading in there, but I guess it's the stripes. They're all animals with stripes, I guess, because of Pure DOS here. But I'll have to go back and watch that
Right.
screen.
I
Yeah, yeah.
see. Now I get it. Yeah, because yeah, I wonder what the tiger was all about.
Yeah, I kind of figured that one out. I thought, oh no, I installed the wrong update, right? Fornax had an update on the smart node, and I'm thinking, oh no, I screwed that one up. I'll be in support. That's gonna look bad. But no, I didn't. No, no, I think I had the right client. I think I'm on the right chain.
Yeah, I saw mine. Mine was I didn't see the tiger, and I was trying to look through the logs, and I couldn't. I could do like a grep through the logs and actually pull it up, but I missed it
Yeah.
going past. And then I was like, okay, it's a testing at least. But then I was like, oh, hang on, is it a testing on the right chain? So then I had to like I had to do all that like cross checking to make sure that it's actually a testing on the right chain, and I'm not gone off on a thing. Everything was up to date and everything, so I was all good. But you have that kind of like, oop, I just want to make sure everything's good.
Yeah, yeah, the pressure's doubly for you. At least if a rocket scientist gets on the wrong chain, maybe that's understandable, right? But hey, not one of the dev team members, right? That can't happen.
Yeah, it's funny though because we're so like heads down on the Rocket Pool protocol, our nodes tend to uh no they don't we're constantly aware of them obviously, but
Yeah.
I probably don't upgrade my node as often as I should do.
Yeah, it's that care and feeding of the plant that takes a little bit of time if you're too busy there. So, yeah, but it's good to at least see the people coming into support. At least they've got beacon chain notifications on or something like that that's letting them know they're not seeing the attestations that are due. So I always worry about the ones that don't have monitoring on, and then something goes wrong or they're offline. That's always a little bit more problematic. But so far, it looks like the chain's doing good. I mean, the call was a lot of fun. It seemed to be uneventful. I guess that's how we like the forks to be, and everybody's talking about the future and not so much really celebrating this fork. It was maybe like about time. Let's move on and work on the next one, Glamsterdam.
Yeah, and I think that kind of I guess boredom during a release is due to all the prep. Like you don't get like um releases can go wrong. But if you've done the huge amount of prep that goes on behind the scenes, then that's what makes it kind of a boring release, and that's definitely what you want.
Yeah, yeah, that seemed good. And I guess just for anybody listening to this live or listen, a lot of people will listen to this within 24 hours, as no one really gets up to listen in the middle of the night, the Rocket Pool community calls, but a lot of people will listen to it in their podcast or their feed, usually within 24 hours afterwards. So if you're listening to this, and maybe you're wondering what we're talking about, just check on your node, right? Make certain it's on the right chain. Make certain you have the latest smart node release. I think it's 1.18.6. Maybe if you're even on 18.5, I think that's sufficient enough. There's some type of last minute change, I think, for Nimbus. I didn't really fully understand it, but I saw Fornex had pushed out another minor update in the last few days here. But definitely check on your chain, check on its health status with your monitoring tools, and all should be good. It looked like the majority of the nodes on Ethereum switched over, so that seemed very good.
Yeah, I think we'll get Mev to put out a couple of like little reminders during the over the next like few weeks and that sort of thing, so that as people become more and more aware of Fusaka, I mean, you'd think that there'll be a good amount of awareness. It's been it's been around for a little while, but yeah, definitely as it kind of like filters through to people, we definitely want to make sure that they're aware.
Yeah, yeah, and then it would be interesting to see, I suppose, in the hours afterwards, the support channel is mainly going to be people that are on the wrong chain and how they can, update their software and resync to the correct chain or roll back their node and that sort of stuff. But the other things I'm kind of interested in looking at here, we saw a little preview of it before Fusaka, but I mean, with PureDOS here, there should be a little bit less hardware requirements or bandwidth requirements. I guess resource requirements might be the better way to say it. And I'd be kind of curious to see how, our home stakers are experiencing that. If we're seeing those reductions in resources and space demands, and if this breathes new life into our 2 GB drives. So I'm kind of curious on that. And then the other thing I've seen is, right before Fusaka, there were enough nodes, I think, putting on the new software that was already signaling for the 60 megagway or whatever gas limit block size, right? That we have all of a sudden really big blocks on Ethereum. And I don't know if you've seen the gas prices recently, but they're sub-gwei levels and holding there throughout the day. So that's pretty neat. I'm thinking to myself, what transactions do I need to do on the blockchain that I can finally afford now? So that's kind of neat to see some of this actually coming into place.
Yeah, yeah. The gas price is crazy. I mean, it's been pretty low for a while. Like the reducing of the resources. Yeah, I'm definitely. I'm in the same boat with the two terabyte drive. So I'm hoping that breathes new life into that. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the requirements change with this stuff.
Yeah, and I haven't, I know there was a resource site that we were sharing around in the Discord that kind of track that, and maybe somebody can find that and post it in trading. But I also didn't know on the timing of it. I mean, I didn't know like, is it one of those things you have to wait a couple of days for it to finally have an effect? I mean, presumably right now we're not downloading all the blobs, and we're just doing the striping, or I forget the name of it, the computer name for the sharing of it, where they it's almost like a RAID striping or whatever, where you don't have to download the whole blob data. Does that go into effect? And and it'd be interesting to just kind of see how quickly we have these resource gains in there. So I'm kind of curious to watch that play out.
I think there might have been two things. There's the blob, there's PeerDAS, and then isn't there like the history dropping history?
Yeah,
And I don't
yeah.
know
I was
where
trying to think of it.
I don't know
I
whether you
don't
need
know.
a resync or not to do that, or whether it just does that like naturally. You'd imagine that they'd be able to just do that naturally, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, and I wasn't really paying too much attention to that state expiatory, because I know we got some of that already, and that did require a little bit of a resync. And then they were talking about other state expiries pre-merge. So I know there's resources out there that really kind of explain what is and isn't in Fusaka, but I just got overwhelmed and never really kind of kept up on it myself. I was like, okay, I got one job. Make certain my node's on the right version. That's what I got to focus on.
Yeah, that's definitely it. Yeah, I mean, forkcast.org is probably the best for
Yeah.
like covering off what's actually in the what does it say about history? Let's see.
Yeah, I see Lee's posting and trading here. History expiry needs a resync for a couple of clients, and a couple of them just
Right.
need a prune command. So
Okay, cool.
Thought I'd pop up and just say blob
Yeah.
expiry is automatic. Blob expiry has always been automatic.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So blobs are already ephemeral. I think they last like 6 weeks. The thing that changed with Fusaka is that your small nodes, your non-super nodes, will store a subnet, so a shard of the blobs, which means they'll store less. So over the next 6 weeks, your existing blobs will expire, and you'll start to see less disk usage.
So we're already like recording and transmitting the sharded versions, right? The fragments, and then just basically as they expire in their weekly expiry, right? Then we'll recover space on the nodes.
Space will start being recovered immediately, essentially, because 6 weeks ago you had blobs that are still on your disk, and those are getting expired, and that's the full blob set. But now you just have a shard, so you have less than the full set being stored. So new blobs you're storing less, and old blobs you're expiring the same amount you always were. In 6 weeks it'll even out, and you'll just have like a static usage.
Static usage, and then even then in the transmitting of these things, right? We should see a little less data bandwidth throughput of the nodes, and that would be expected with these smaller shards.
Yeah, it will go back up. There's a great website that the Panda Ops team put out that I can share in the chat, but the bandwidth will go up as the BPO forks happen. So will the disk space. If you're only running like one mini pool, then you'll actually see a reduction even in the long term. But if you have several mini pools, depending on how many you have, you might see an increase in bandwidth in the long term or an increase in disk usage in the long term. But in the short term, everything should be sort of trending downward.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Like, so I was thinking about this, right? We had this like pre-Fusaka by a couple of days signaling on larger block sizes by all the new clients everybody's was updating, is having set for this larger block size and gas limit, right? And then I guess post-Fusaka in a matter of weeks or days here, right? There's supposed to be these blob updates, right? These like mini forks, right? These are the BPOs, right?
BPOs, yeah.
Yeah. What does BPO stand for?
Blob parameter only. Yeah, she stands for.
Okay, interesting. And so these are, they want more blob space too. And so do we need to do anything to update that, or are these hard coded in the clients that we're running if we're on Fusaka, right? Are these just set to happen at a certain date and time, and we don't have to do anything? We just go from 10 blobs or whatever we're at to the higher numbers?
Yeah, apparently there's a schedule that's baked into the clients.
Okay, excellent. Any things from either you or Patches about just Fusaka in general here? It seemed like it was another successful fork, and I don't know if there's anything else we want to add or talk about on that area.
If you're using the rescue node, I apologize. There's been some downtime. I completely forgot to update some of our dependencies, and then also there was an EIP that lowered the global gas limit, and I was doing some multi-call stuff that was in excess of the gas limit. I fixed it all. It should be coming back online now.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you for that update on there. Yeah, I'd actually seen that EIP on there, and had pinged Kane a while back, just thinking about the deployment of Saturn. And if I recall his response, we were just under the limit, so he doesn't have to deploy Saturn in multiple transactions.
Oh, actually, I think he ended up breaking it up. I think he ended up breaking it up into 2 bits. To make sure that we're. Oh, hang on. No, sorry. We were just under. That's right. I think he was looking at how we would do it. It was because the limit is 16 million, and I think we're at like 14 million, which is a decent. It's a decent transaction.
Yeah, I was going to say pre-gas prices, that would have been a costly deployment of code to the blockchain, but
For
now it's
sure.
probably quite affordable, you know.
When we released the mainnet version, I think gas costs were something like, well, they got to 200 at some point, but I don't think it was 200 when we launched. I think it was like 100 and something when we launched. It's pretty expensive.
Wow. Okay, well maybe we'll switch topics a little bit and talk about Saturn 1, and maybe we can break apart Saturn 1 from things that have been happening in the last month, including the latest DevNet. I had a chance a little bit to talk to the team there in Buenos Aires, right? And we were still on Hoodie, and we were talking about DevNet 4. I totally missed. I was overwhelmed. I got to admit, I was just oversaturated and over sensory perception at DevNet. It was hard to function afterwards. Sorry, after DevConnect, and I guess I missed DevNet 5. So maybe can you talk to us about the latest testing, DevNet 5? If there's going to be another DevNet, are we in Ephemery? Are we on just a private test net? Help us understand what is going on right now with Saturn 1 final testing.
All right, cool. So DevNet 5 has now been released. So it was kind of at the beginning of this week. We actually rolled it out the end of last week, but we were doing some like internal testing before everything was going live to make sure that basically we had a working Houston version. And then open it up to everyone on beginning of the week as Houston. And then on Tuesday, our time, which would have been Monday, everyone else's, we transitioned it to Saturn. So yeah, that went really well. Like in fact, it was boring. So that was great. We've gone through and done some like verifications and all that sort of stuff. So now it's kind of ready for everyone to have a play around with. We've got like a massive test suite, or kind of like manual test suite that we go through to test all the new features and regression test the old ones. And so we're just working through that at the moment to make sure everything's cool. And everything seems really good. Like I haven't done any withdrawals or anything yet, and that's probably where that's where most of the new stuff is. But we'll kind of have a look at that, and we're looking. We haven't done V11 yet, which again is a lot of the new stuff. A lot of the things that we're testing at the moment we have actually tested a few times now. But it's kind of like, but there have been a lot of changes based on auditor feedback and that sort of thing. So it's definitely worth going over it all and making sure everything still works. But no, everything works really well. We're really excited to kind of like get through this testing, and yeah, it's going well so far. Oh, sorry, and to answer your question about the network. So so we are on Ephemery. So we kind of looked at doing our own DevNet thing. There were a couple of little unknowns around deploying it to everyone. Like I think it works fine with just the team. When you open it up to everybody, there were a few little unknowns that we weren't kind of sure of, and we wanted kind of like a really smooth experience. So we decided not to go with the DevNet just yet, and go with Ephemery. Ephemery is working really well. It's really easy to get the ETH and all of that sort of stuff. You just run like a little faucet website, and it downloads like 500 at a time, whatever. And so it's just really easy. It's been quite smooth, and there's hardly anyone using Ephemery, so it's really quick. So yeah, I think it's it's going to be good for this DevNet. I think later on, when the last kind of like bit of testing that we need to do is there's a testnet. That's obviously on Hoodie, and then we'll kind of like see what we're going to do in terms of DevNets and testnets in the new year. But at this point, we've got DevNet 5 that's active and ready for people to test, and then eventually we'll have the testnet transitioning a little bit later on once we get this testing done.
Okay, so let me just see if I kind of track in a couple of things here. Originally the problem was that on the, so Ethereum has two major test nets, right? Sepolia, which is really for testing code and deploying contracts and that sort of stuff. And yeah, I don't think it's a permissionless validator set. I think the core teams run the validators there, right? And then there's the Hoodie testnet, which was, really intended for maybe the validators and the beacon chain testing, right? And I guess the problem we ran into is that the validator queue, just like mainnet, was very long on Hoodie, right? It became impractical to test launching a validator or mini pull or mega pull and then waiting for it to go through the Hoodie beacon chain, right? So that prompted us to look for faster alternatives, right? Where we could test the code and deploy the code and experiment with the code and get results much faster, right? And so that kind of led down this route, right? So what kind of, I guess, a couple of my questions then is, so what happens? Like we've got to test Saturn a couple of times here, right? Are you thinking that all the tests on Saturn are going to be in this ephemery test net? And ephemery, for those that don't know, it's an Ethereum chain, another testnet chain. So I guess maybe it's the third one that's supported, but it disappears, right? It gets erased every 30 days, right? It comes up and exists and then disappears and then comes up and it disappears. So what, you guys going to have to do it, or do we have to time ourselves when we get in? How does that work?
So in terms of timing, we've got enough. So the timing actually worked really well for us. So ephemery only reset like last week, or like not even that. So we've got a reasonable amount of time to test. So in terms of the DevNet 5 testing, I think we've got plenty of time to get the testing done. And so that's going to work fine for us for DevNet 5. As you said, I think as a long-term testnet, or a long-term DevNet, it's probably not ideal because it does keep resetting. I mean, we can kind of like adjust. It's not super difficult to adjust, really. I mean, our process for deploying the contracts is quite streamlined, and it's really changed. The network ID changes, which is slightly annoying, but we could kind of handle that if we wanted to. So it's still an option going forward. I think probably we will probably just use this kind of like DevNet, a private DevNet, for any of the like internal testing that we're doing, and some of the kind of small scale external testing that we do. Hoodie's actually kind of returning back to normal now, so that's good. And so hopefully,
yeah, I just looked.
Yeah.
I guess the queue is only minutes long, so that's good, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I mean, you could get times. I mean, the real issue is you could get times when Hoodie has some real contention, and it wrecks your testing timelines and all that sort of stuff. So that's why we need other options, and that's good that we've got these other options for the actual like DevNet testing. The testnet, I think, is still good to have on Hoodie, because Hoodie is it is contentious, and you need to have that kind of like a staging environment. It's close to production as you can kind of get. So we definitely need that for the testnet. But I've actually spoken to the EF about this, because Hoodie and Sepolia, the way they're set up, is a bit funny, because, as you said, all the so Sepolia is controlled essentially by the core devs in terms of the staking layer in terms of consensus. So you can't really, we can't participate in consensus on Sepolia, but all of the end user stuff, like Safe and Aave and all of that sort of stuff, they're all deployed on Sepolia because that's where they kind of like do testing on Sepolia. But then you've got Hoodie, which is just the staking stuff, but then most of the end user stuff's not on there, so it's really not ideal. Well, if you want to do kind of like very wide ecosystem sort of testing, which to be fair we don't really do that much of that, but it would be definitely handy, and some of that infrastructure is really handy to have on Hoodie. So we've been kind of like talking to them about the fact that that's not ideal, but we can make all that work for us, and I think we've got a good plan going forward. I think, as I said, we'll use the DevNets for all of the internal testing and some of the small scale external testing, and then use Hoodie for the testnet as the kind of like staging environment and that sort of thing.
Okay, so let me just ask some follow-up questions. So I guess for new node operators coming into the Rocket Pool ecosystem, we're still encouraging them before they go to mainnet to use the Hoodie testnet, right? That's still what the documentation's geared toward. That's still what the clients support, right? The configuration TUI and the smart node, right? But then what about? Yeah. So then what about the what about what I would call maybe the advanced node operators now that are getting excited about Saturn 1 and the launch, which we'll get to talking about in a second here, but people that want to, okay, I want to do a dry run, I want to do one last, like you called it a dry run, or the dress rehearsal right before the thing, right? Are we going to do that again on Hoodie? Because Hoodie's already gone once over to Saturn, right? But it was the pre-audit version of Saturn. Like, what do you want the node operators that are doing the final testing to be doing? Like, should we do anything right now? Do we just wait, or what's up?
So what you do is, if you want to be involved in the Saturn testing, which I think is probably a good idea, it means you can familiarize yourself with how Saturn works. Get involved in the testing on DevNet 5, and like on Ephemera, yeah. So on Ephemera, so the smart node build takes care of setting up your node and all of that sort of stuff. So you don't need to do anything in terms of that. You do need to get like the Ephemera ETH, which is probably the only thing that's kind of like going on there. But everything else is kind of done for you. So definitely test out Saturn so that you know how it's going to work and get a feel for it. So that's one thing. The other thing is when we actually do testnet. So we've got the testnet on Hoodie. As you said, there's kind of like two. Actually, the testnet on Hoodie at the moment is Houston, not Saturn, right? So
no, I think it's Saturn. Am I wrong in that?
No, you're wrong, because at least I'm like 99.99% sure.
Okay.
So no, the testnet. So we had DevNet 4. DevNet 4 was on Hoodie, and that was Saturn, but the testnet should be Houston at the moment.
Okay.
I can triple check that because I've got
I'm probably misrecognizing. I do remember, exiting some of my mini polls because I wanted to try to recreate as much like real life conditions as possible. And I know there's a flag, I suppose, that turns on the mega poll commands, but maybe they're not active. I'm just looking at mine. I don't have any mega polls, so yeah, maybe it's not active then. No, it says, wait a minute. It says the node has a mega pool deployed. So I think maybe I'm going to go back to my first thing. I think one of the Saturns is active on Hoodie. No, am I wrong? I don't know. Somebody in Trading Post?
Yeah. DevNet 4 is Saturn.
Is Saturn, but it's not mainnet on Hoodie, right? Or I don't know how to describe it. It's not the main contract on Hoodie, but DevNet 4 is on Hoodie, right?
Yes. Yes. So
Yeah.
okay. So there are two things. There are two things that define like a rocket pool release on a particular network, right?
Yeah.
There's the network and then the storage contract, and each deployment of rocket pool is a different storage contract, but they could be deployed on multiple times on the same network. So, for example, on Hoodie we have like DevNet 1, DevNet 2, DevNet 3, DevNet 4, and testnet. They're all on Hoodie, but they're different implementations and with different code and completely separate from each other. So with DevNet 4 is Saturn, and I think the testnet. Trying to see how I would check.
Yeah, testnet is still Houston. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to pick up something else to check it, but yeah. So I am like pretty sure testnet is still Houston, because the whole point with the testnet is that we want to use it as a staging environment, and so as a node operator, if you want to go through the process, then what I would suggest is spin up some mini pools on testnet, and basically. So in the when you actually install Rocket Pool, there are generally three options. In fact, there might only be two options. When you to be involved in the DevNet, you have to actually install a dev build, and it'll have like 1.18.6-dev, right? Whereas like a normal build, it just has like 1.18.6. On a normal build, I think you only get two options. You get mainnet and testnet. So mainnet is obviously mainnet, testnet is Hoodie, and at the moment it's Houston code. If you install the DevNet build, you get this extra option, which is the DevNet, which is on Ephemery, and that's DevNet 5.
Yeah.
So if you want to test it out and go through the process, then what you do is you would go on to the testnet and spin up some mini pools, and then at some point, hopefully quite reasonably soon, we'll be upgrading the testnet to Saturn, and so you'd be able to go through that process of exiting your mini pools, and then redepositing into mega pools and going through that process and feeling how that process works. I think it's still good to go through and play around on the DevNet as well, but if you wanted to kind of like go through and test out that process, then you can do that on the testnet as well.
Okay, perfect. Then much better at explaining it and helping kind of recall this. So this is a good segue to kind of move us into future modes, right? Okay, so we had a little bit of a conversation at DevNet just about hey, do we think we're on time and roadmap, and what are the final steps for kind of the dress rehearsal, the final DevNets, the audits, the testnet, and then the release. Maybe can you walk us through this here from it? So what happens next? Is it more DevNets, when testnet, when audits? Walk us through what you're thinking between here and launch.
Right. Okay. So DevNet 5 is going on, and we've got to go through and do that testing. In parallel, the fix checks are still going on at the moment. So the audits, so Cantina and Balsec are still doing their fix checks. So the fix checks are because Saturn is such a big release. It's kind of not necessarily taken auditors by surprise, but it's gone. The fix checks have gone beyond the usual time that you would usually spend doing fix checks, if you know what I mean. So we're kind of like working with them to make sure that they've got capacity to finish off the fix checks, and get them kind of, because when you do the fix checks, it's kind of like a part-time thing, and they do it while they're doing other things. And the fix checks are still quite intense. So we're working through them to make sure that they've got enough capacity, and we're helping them go through the the fixed checks, but it is definitely taking longer than we expected. So that is probably the thing that I think the testing is probably going to be okay, but getting these fixed checks done in time for the timeline for the January date is very challenging. At this stage, I'm starting to think that we're going to end up being pushed out by a couple of weeks. But that's I'm not 100% sure yet, but that's definitely looking like it is.
Okay. And so remind me here, I'm always kind of nervous about my recollection on stuff. What was the original date that we were targeting in January? And then what are you thinking at this point with these fixed checks taking longer as being the revised date?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So the time that it was actually, let's double check, mid-January. I'm trying to get the exact date. Yeah, so it was the 19th of January. Was the is the target launch date. So we're still kind of trying to target that. Right, realistically, I think we could probably get the audit cycles done by then. But I think it's going to end up pushing things out a little bit, and also, that assumes that there is, absolutely nothing that comes out of the fixed checks, which we'll definitely be triaging very heavily. So, in other words, we will only be including things that are absolutely necessary for like a safe launch. But it kind of like depends on what comes out of those fixed checks. The one big thing that's kind of like changed is like the withdrawal proof. We've changed the withdrawal proof quite heavily, and the reason, there's some good reasons really for that. The main reason was that the previous withdrawal proof relied on slot time, and at the time that we made the call, the slot time changing to 6 seconds was included in Amsterdam. It's no longer included in Amsterdam, but the core devs are still very very keen to get that changed, the slot time. So it's much better that we just deal with that now and not have to deal with it in the future. So that's why we've kind of like changed it to not do that. So that's kind of like a reasonable thing. But yeah, so that's where we're at the moment. So both Cantina and Barsec are working through those fixed checks, and then they should be able to finish those basically before Christmas, like in the next few weeks, and then we'll do the last deployment, which I don't think we're going to need. So depending on what comes out of the fixed checks, I don't think we're going to need another DevNet. I think we can just upgrade the DevNet in place. It really depends on what comes out of it. The best case scenario is that there's very minor changes that we need to make, and so we will make that to the DevNet, just upgrade it in place, do some final testing, then release the audits, release the bug bounty stuff, go on to testnet, and then it's the governance process of going through the ODAL and all that sort of stuff. So they're kind of like the steps that we need to take. So yeah, it's probably looking like beginning of February rather than kind of like mid January.
Yeah, maybe we could just expand on this just a little bit more, because I'm sure this is going to be chatted a lot. Already looking at trading, and there's a lot of conversation in trading, right? So help me understand these fixed checks, or is that in the initial audit they found a bug or a concern, right? So the team, Kane, and everyone else kind of made corrections or implemented solutions to that. And so now the auditors are looking at the fixes, right? And they're re-auditing them or to either verify the fix addresses the issue identified or is accurate. Is that a fair description of what the fix checks are?
So the fix checks are the audit teams have gone through their audit, and then they've raised some issues that need to be addressed. Whether that's and they vary from kind of like they vary in terms of the severity and that sort of thing. So they've gone through their audit. They produced kind of like an audit report, and then what we do is we go through and we fix those things, and then the audit team then comes back and just checks to make sure that we have fixed the issues that they've raised. And so that's what they're doing now. Is they're just basically just looking at what the fixes that we have put in place has actually fixed the issue and haven't caused more issues or whatever. You know what I mean? Like they've just gone through and make sure that it's secure with the new code.
Okay, and then it sounded like you're signaling that okay, there's going to be a delay from January 19th, and you were thinking it might be about a 2-week delay, if I understood you correctly. But correct me if I'm wrong. And you're saying that it's not certain yet. It depends upon. I was a little confused on what it depends upon, how quickly the audit teams get back, or whether or not they still find issue with the corrective actions the team has taken. Help us understand that a little bit more about what is the trigger that requires you to announce an official delay of the Saturn One launch, and when will you know it by, and how much of a delay? Help explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, so I've been working with the audit teams this week to kind of like figure out the timing. I still need to adjust the timeline properly because they've been trying to figure out their capacity to actually finish off the fix checks. So I'll know a little bit more today because we've got a meeting with Cantina today. Bausek, we've already kind of like locked them in. So I'll be able to kind of like update the timeline by kind of like end of today, so that I'll know what the sort of timing is in terms of the kind of like push out. So it's mainly just, so from that perspective, it's mainly just their capacity, and we're kind of like aware of that. Well, we will be aware of that capacity by the end of today, and so we'll have like the ideal case. Obviously we don't know whether there's anything going to come out of the fix checks. As I said, the ideal case is there are no other issues that come out of the fix checks. And even if we do, we'll, as I said before, we'll triage those very heavily.
Okay.
So the best case. So I'll be able to kind of like come up with the best case scenario.
Okay, yeah, and certainly it's always important to do the right thing and be absolutely certain, especially with the big protocol upgrades like this, right? The last thing we want is some some error in the code or vulnerability, right? So, proceed with due diligence and so forth. But if you were to put kind of odds on it right now, it sort of sounds like you're just signaling, not really announcing a delay, but if you were going to put odds on it and polymarket, like what would you give it? Do you think it's a high likelihood of a delay, and by how long?
Yeah, I think there is a high likelihood of a delay. And it should only really be like a few weeks, but I will know for sure kind of by the end of today.
Okay, so stand by to stand by, and everybody's getting early news of a possible delay announcement, huh? Okay. Okay, so there's another question that maybe I'll skip to in the agenda because it's coming up in trading here, which is, there's a couple of votes that still have 2 days of voting that are out there, and two of those actually are in kind of affect Saturn 1 launches, right? One of those was changing the express ticket queue allocation I want to talk about. But let me jump to the other one, which is kind of where the question from trading is coming from, which is there was a vote to close the mini pool queue right now. So that way nodes don't continue to make mini pool queues. And it looks like it's set to pass. It's got, like I said, 2 days of voting still left on it. And it was the proposal, the vote was to close it 6 weeks ahead of the expected Saturn 1 launch. And so what are you thinking with that, with recognizing you don't know exactly when the launch is? It's either going to, originally targeted January 19th. If you say a 2-week delay, I think that puts us to February 2nd. I don't know if that's April Fool's Day or not. Or like I said, that would be in April, but February 2nd in there. But what are you thinking about that queue then? Would it still be 2 weeks from that date or 2 weeks from the 16th?
So yeah, I mean, I'm open to suggestion, but I think the RPIP basically says or to the best estimate of 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So so I think what we'll do is we'll figure out the new timing, put that out there, and then we can basically figure out a rough estimate of like 6 weeks. We'll have to kind of like figure it out over the Christmas timing and all that sort of stuff. But we should be fine for that. It's quite an easy process anyway. But yeah, so that we'll kind of like work backwards from that date, from the new date.
Yeah. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it. I think Dr. D is doing the math that, December 8th would have been the one at 6 weeks. And I can't say I'm all that recollecting the exact language in the RPIP, if it indeed is just set there, or if it, somewhere I recalled it was like 6 weeks ahead of the expected date. And so, but I'm hearing December 8th from Dr. D in there. So maybe that happens irregardlessly then.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it says
I mean, we
the
can.
mini pool will close to new entries sometime from the passing of this RPIP up until December 8th, or 6 weeks prior to the launch. So I guess if the launch is delayed, then I guess the delay would be there. But yeah, but it seems like a lot of people in trading are saying, hey, as soon as possible, but by December 8th. But I am reading the language. It says or 6 weeks prior to the Saturn 1 launch at the latest. So I don't know, but I'm of the I'm of the boat. Close it earlier, right? Just because we don't want people stuck in that mini pool queue, and so maybe hold off on your decision to delay the date till you close the queue first, I suppose, is one way to do it, right? Yeah. But yeah,
I mean, I can. I can take guidance from the community to see what they think. Yeah, I don't mind closing it early, but
yeah. Well, I guess technically it does give you the authority, or the like, I don't know if we sell the Guardian or in there, right? I have to read the read the governance rules, but like, it clearly says once the vote passes, it's scheduled to pass in 2 days, right? Unless there's a huge change in the voting population. And then it looks like it does give authority between then and up to that end date. But yeah, I think I'd certainly be advocate for it. As a lot of people are commenting and trading right now, that's on there. So yeah, okay. Let me ask you other ones then. Okay, so you're gonna need today or a few days to get the information from the audit teams, and really, I guess it's up to whatever they say. But you're thinking, even in a very optimistic response from them, we're looking at an early February launch date, right? I don't know if you want to commit to the second and then 2 weeks, but eventually you hope to get a message out to the community with a revised launch date here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay, and then one of the other things that we kind of talked about is there are so many changes. I mean, even me, I'm struggling a little bit with all the changes that happen in here, right? Ethereum and whole, but just even on Saturn, right? And what's different this time versus the other ones is it actually requires well, I guess is one of my questions. In order to participate in the new mega pools, right, it requires an exit of the validator. So it will actually be an exiting out of the beacon chain, a closure of the mini pools, a reestablishment of mega pool contracts, a re-entry into the beacon chain. And there's a lot of questions, that I think people have about the process, right? Because we haven't done the dry run on Hoodie, and even then, it's a little confusing for folks. What should they be doing? What should they not be doing? There's a little bit of conversation about is there something they should be doing now? Fortunately, the validator queue on mainnet is still long. I looked just right before this call, and it was 23 days to exit. So about 3 weeks or so, right? And so the question is, what should node operators do now? Should they be exiting? But then we also changed our fast pass. That's the second vote that looks like it's due to pass here, where is the better option for node operators to stay until Saturn One actually launches and then post Saturn One exit their mini pools and then transition? Do they have to exit their mini pools, right? We started having all these conversations, and I think there were two things you said at Dev Connect that we thought about doing here. One of them is to just maybe have a special call or audio help channel or whatever where people can ask these questions and get some advice. And then you were talking about a large article to be published. Maybe talk to me a little bit just about the coordination needed and the planning for our node operators once you do set a launch date. Like when is that going to happen? When does that happen? What needs to happen?
Right. So yeah, as you said, so there is like a migration process to migrate from mini pools to mega pools. To now, in terms of like when people want to do that migration process, that is entirely up to the node operator. Like if you want to be there on day one, then you can exit now. Although I'd be like, there's if you do that, if you do that before Saturn is released, there is like a caveat, and that is you can't. So if you want to get your express tickets, which allows you to kind of go past any new people, then if you want those express tickets, then you have to wait until Saturn is released. You can exit your validators and have the ETH sitting in there, and then not not close the mini pool. But to be honest, the safest way is just to stay in the protocol until Saturn is live, and then you'll get your express tickets, and then kind of like migrate at your leisure. Essentially, like there's not any rush really. I think there is going to be ETH coming back in and cycling through. But it's going to take quite a while, I think, to migrate everybody over to mega pools anyway. So really, just kind of take your time in doing the migration. I think it's probably a good idea to see how that process is going. What rETH demand there is, how the kind of like churn affects the discount and all that sort of thing. So yeah, okay. I would argue that that process is going to take a while anyway. So you should do it at your leisure.
Okay, and then maybe we can talk just a little bit about the other vote, right? There's a change in the Express mini queue. Do you want to maybe explain that a little bit about what that change is and the thing I noticed, maybe I'm misreading it, is it actually changes the ratio between express queue entries versus normal queue entries. Am I misreading that?
Yeah, so I think there's two things. There's two things in there. The first thing is it sets the like the base provision of express tickets to 0. So what that means is that new node operators essentially won't get any express tickets um, uh, post Saturn. So they won't get the express tickets, and also current node operators won't get those extra two tickets either. So that's the first thing. The other thing is the changing of the rate of the amount of essentially what it does is it means that the express queue is more it works faster than the standard queue, which it already did, but it makes it even faster. So essentially, it gets prioritized more than the standard queue. So in that way, that people with express tickets will get that kind of like preferential migration. So if you're an existing node operator, the idea is that if you're an existing node operator, you you can use those express tickets to kind of get ahead of new ETH deposited.
Okay, and then just a few follow-up questions here, I guess. One of those things you mentioned was writing this article. I guess in your revised timeline, maybe let's just assume for a second that you are thinking it's going to be delayed by 2 weeks. When do you think the community might have access to a couple of things? One, the article, and then two, the audit reports.
So the article, I think we'll try and get out. I mean, most of that stuff is pretty set. So I would argue that we would try and get that out like the first week of January, or that like from the 5th to the 9th or something like that. Try and get that article out that week, so that we lay out, because then by then we'll have an extremely good handle on on the launch. Anyway, but most of it we could write now, so we may even start putting that together, in the next week or so, to so that we can have it out in that first week. So I think that's not bad timing for that. The other thing was the audit reports. So that really depends on how the audits, how the fixed checks go. So ideally, again, it's around that timing, that kind of like first week of January. Like the auditors really need to have finished kind of by the end of December, for us to kind of like meet those dates. So that's when we're aiming. That's what we're kind of aiming for. And so that first week of January, ideally we can get out the audit reports, and the switch over the bug bounty to be with the new Saturn code.
Okay, yeah, sounds good there. And then yeah, I think Mav was thinking, oh, this would be a small update call, but actually quite a lot to go through here. But we've been talking for a better part of an hour, but I feel like we've got maybe a good update now to Saturn 1 and so forth. Are there any other things, Langers, from your point of view, either that bring us up to Saturn, or any of the work maybe post Saturn 1 here that you want to talk about for just the little bit of remaining time we have left on today's call?
I think we covered kind of like most of it. I think definitely want to reiterate that the more people that test this release, the better. So on the DevNet 5, if people want to get involved in that, there's like a DevNet testing thread, which is, if you go through the announcements, I've put the thread in there. So definitely jump in there and kind of ask in there if you need RPL or whatever for the testing. So definitely go through and test it. We need to kind of like test it with different clients and that sort of thing. That's always the hardest part. You know, going through and testing it with lots of different clients and that sort of thing to make sure it works for everybody. But yeah, that's definitely something that I want to reiterate.
Okay. And then I guess, Mav, if you're still with us, right? We got maybe a couple of things coming up here, right? You wanted to spend a little bit of time next week talking about marketing, and I think we all decided, at least many of the community members that were there at Dev Connect, for me, it was overwhelming, but in a good way. And there's lots of takeaways that I fully haven't digested yet, and some that are just applicable to Ethereum and whole, and some that are applicable to Rocket Pool. And but I think next week we wanted to kind of do a post Dev Connect rehash and a little bit of marketing update. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the plan, Ken. Like you said, I thought this call would be a bit on the short side, but we've well and truly ran past the hour. So the good thing is that even though Lang is not around next week, we have a lot of content to talk about, especially Dev Connect, which was a great event, and I'm sure that will keep us busy later next week.
Yeah.
But for now, I think we'll just have to uh, start winding up the call shortly. We've got stand up starting soon, so need to hop off and head over there.
Yeah, it always surprises me, even after spending a week together in Dev Connect. You think we would have nothing, nothing to talk about, but that is never the case in this space. So, yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to have Langers you on this week, and hope you have some nice time away next week, and lots to look forward to. And yeah, let us know what you're thinking. We certainly want to make the right decision with the launch and all. So I understand all the pressures you're under, but yeah, to whatever degree you can keep the community involved or updated, that would be excellent.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely get something out this week. But I'll probably do that tomorrow morning or something like that to kind of update people on the timing.
Sounds good. Mav, I'm looking forward to talking to you next week. There's lots to digest, lots going on in the space. So, been a pleasure having this call this week.
Yep. Thanks, Ken. We'll chat next
Thanks, Ken. Always good to chat.
All right. Talk to everyone in trading. Bye.